uh, Taylor Max actually just hit his 10-year anniversary. He started with me in Miami in summer of 2011. For those who know Mary Lou, he was actually in the same training class as Mary Lou. And so they grew as reps together. Taylor Max was one of the most skeptical representatives that I ever had in training. Question everything. He's like, is this for real? Do people really buy? So I don't know about this, you know? And I just remember thinking like, man, this kid could be so great. And I'm so glad that he stuck around. He just got inducted this past year into the Cutco Hall of Fame, passing $1 million, in personal sales, which is just awesome. And just had his biggest push and his biggest finish to his push. I think his last 4-day finish almost matched some of his biggest pushes. And you could speak more to that. But last week, for those who don't know, we have Vector East, Vector West. Vector East is a week earlier in their competition, still the same amount of days, but just a week earlier. So they just finished last week. And in his last 4 days, he sold over $30,000. Did everyone hear me? Last 4 days, sold over $30,000. And guess what, Taylor Max? We're in our last 4 days. We have 4 full days and we have Saturday morning before the conference. And so I'm going to stop taking your time. I'm so excited to have you here. So excited to hear from you. It's been amazing to watch over the last decade, growing from this punk ass boy to this like badass businessman that you are. So I'm going to remove myself and hand it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kathy. And I am so glad for the opportunity to give back a little bit. I can't say, I don't think that I would be selling Cutco if I had started in any other office in the company at the time. I mean, I know it's hard to appreciate things when you have them until they're gone. But now that you guys have Kathy, I'm telling you to appreciate her, because without her leadership, I wouldn't be here. I was very fortunate to have started in such a ridiculously amazing office. So I'm glad to give you guys a little bit of goods today and give back a little bit. And the topic of Finish Strong is something that is very, very near and dear to my heart. It's something that I pride myself in as being one of my strengths in the business. And it really all started back in 2011, my first SC2. I'll share that story at the end, but I had a crazy finish to that first $10,000 push. And that's a theme that has run through my career. I think one of the biggest realizations I had in life and in my business was in 2016. I was trying to sell $150,000 for the year, hit standard of excellence, win that big sword. And it didn't go as planned. Going into the last 6 weeks of the year, I had $60,000 left to sell. So over about 11 months, I had sold 70,000, and now I had 6 weeks to somehow sell $60,000. And it was something that I didn't think was possible. And through following great leaders and having incredible circles of influence in my business at the time, I was able to make that happen. And I had my biggest month, sold $40,000 in December, $17,000 on the last day. 12,000 of that came to my past customers over the phone. And then I had an appointment at 10 o'clock at night, which I left at 11 o'clock, or which I left at like 1 o'clock in the morning with a $5,000 order to hit $150,000. I ended up tabbing $150,000, $150,001.50 to hit that number at the very end. And it was crazy. So this last year during SC2 was really no different. I set out to sell $70,000, something that in our region had only been done twice by 2 people. And I didn't know if it was possible. My biggest push was 40. As a matter of fact, I had sold 44 years in a row. I hadn't been able to break through that barrier. And there were different reasons that contributed to that. You know, COVID played a role. I think selling 40 under those circumstances was still pretty cool, but I went in very frustrated and with a mission that I was not going to show up at SC2 with another $40,000 report again. And the push got off to a strong start, had a little bit of a weak center. And as I came into the end, so the Friday before the end of the push, which would have been this past Friday for you guys, I was at $38,000 for the push. That Saturday didn't go great. That Sunday didn't go well. And on that Sunday, I basically was almost at 40. I could see I was going to get to 40. I was right there, maybe 38, 39,000. And I asked myself a question that I ask myself every time I get towards the end of a contest, towards the end of a period in which I'm trying to achieve a goal. And this one question is something that drives me and has given me the perspective I need to finish pushes strong or finish out what I set out to accomplish. And the question is very simple. Am I going to quit? Am I going to quit? And for me, I'm not a quitter. That's not something I take lightly. And I make commitment. I've always been really good at honoring the commitment of doing everything I said I was going to do till the very end. And it's a very strong conversation I have to have with myself. Like, okay, here's where I'm at. And I don't see how I'm going to finish where I wanted to finish. Like, trust me, when you're at $39,000, $40,000, I'm sure some of you are feeling this way about your goal to get to 70, to almost double my push in 4 days. It doesn't seem realistic. It doesn't seem feasible. I only had about 6 appointments scheduled. So I didn't even have the people in my calendar or the people to call that I felt like, oh, this could pop. This could go really well. It didn't seem possible. But I asked myself, am I going to quit? And of course, the answer to that was no. So if I'm not going to quit, what am I doing? Why am I stopping? Why am I pausing? Why am I slowing down? What is that going to do? Is that going to help me get closer? Is that going to help me achieve any of my goals in life? Is stopping and not continuing going to do anything positive for me? And of course, when the answer is no, then I get to this point where I release myself from the goal. I release myself from really what is the results. And this kind of goes against Hal Elrod's miracle morning equation or miracle equation, which is something that has driven me and helped me a lot throughout my pushes. Unwavering faith plus extraordinary effort equals ridiculous results. But that extraordinary faith part I've always really struggled with, to be perfectly honest. A lot of times, especially when you're chasing big goals, and big goals could be a $10,000 push for you if it's your first push. It could be 20, 30, whatever seems big to you. I've always struggled to have that extraordinary faith. And for me, I think it's because I get very attached to my results. I get very attached to how, my CPO or the call results. And I needed to find a way to separate myself from the results. I think that's so crucial as you go into the last 4 days, being able to detach yourself from the results and strictly focus on the action. And this is something that happened to the first time to me in 2016, when it came down to those last 6 weeks. And I pushed really hard for the first week and I sold $3,000. It was not enough, and I got discouraged, but I had this team of people. I had Francisco Herrera, which a lot of you probably know, Mariana Gayani, and Colton from Tampa. These 3 individuals, the 4 of us, had set out to do this thing together, to sell $150,000 for the year. And I knew that they were going to do it. And I knew that they were doing everything in their power to make it happen. And so how could I, as a close friend of theirs, as somebody that, we had been there for each other many times, how could I just give up and let them keep going on their own? So I had this conversation with myself in 2016 on that week where I said, okay, let's be real, Taylor. I'm not going to sell $150,000. It's just, there's no way that I can sell $60,000 in the next 6 weeks. I don't have the customers for it. And I listed all these reasons in my head why I couldn't do it. But I also cannot stop. I can't give up. I can't stop trying. I can't stop selling. I may not get there, but I need to be able to know that at the end of this thing, I can talk to my friends in their face. I can see them at the conference and tell them that I did everything I could to the very, very end, no matter what, regardless of how I was feeling. And that was where it came from. I completely released myself from the goal. I told myself it's impossible. It's not going to happen. But I have to do everything that I can, no matter what, to the very end to get as close as I possibly can. And through that thought process for me, that was the first time I think that I had really seriously, completely detached myself from my results. Not necessarily my goal, because I was still working towards that 150, but I detached myself from any results because the results didn't matter because I told myself I wasn't going to hit it, right? And by doing that, I was able to strictly focus on the action, without a care in the world for what happened when I made that phone call or when I went on that appointment. And I just kept going and going and going. And I called almost every customer I had at the time. I remember this one week. So I had a pretty good first week of those 6 weeks. I sold $10,000 that first week. At the time, it was one of my biggest weeks ever. I had one of my biggest orders ever. So that gave me a little boost. But then going into that second week, I only sold like $2,000. And I made more phone calls that week than I had ever made in my career. But a lot of those phone calls, I had warmed up those customers. I had shared my goal, which we'll talk about in a second. And I was able to call them back at the very end. And that's how I sold $12,000 on the last day over the phone, and then a $5,000 appointment at night to hit my goal. And so the power of being able to detach myself from the results, I saw that in that moment when I hit that goal. I didn't think I was going to hit it until maybe like 6 o'clock on the last day. I had just recommitted myself no longer to the goal, because for me, the goal seemed unachievable, but to the actions. And the action was doing everything in my power to the very end, no matter what. And I went through that same process this year with my FC2 push, where on Sunday, I had the same conversation. Am I going to quit? And the answer was, I can't quit. I'm not going to quit. So I'm going to keep going. So why stop? Why slow down? And that Monday, after I had that conversation on Sunday with myself, that Monday, I made calls like a beast. I have not made calls that aggressively for such a long period of time, probably in years. I was on a mission. I decided I can't sell 70. It's not going to happen. But maybe I can beat Colton's best push, which was 65. I can definitely get to 55. It's going to take some effort, but I can get there and win the ultimate set that our region was giving. So let me just do everything I can, no matter what. And all day on the phone, I had one appointment on that Monday, and I sold nothing. I warmed up a lot of people. I targeted some of my best customers. I shared my goals with a lot of people, but I didn't sell anything. And then I had this appointment at 6 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, here's my reward. I've put in the effort. This is like karma is going to come back to me. And I did the appointment, and I sold a pair of shears, feeling great. Well, I got off that appointment, and again, I wasn't disappointed, because at that point I was detached from the results. I was focused like a warrior on the calls and on the action. And I got back on the phone, and I called a random customer that bought a signature set from me in January. Didn't even remember who he was. I just saw $2,000 CPO on his order. And I'm like, hey, he bought $2,000 first time I met him. Maybe he loves it. Let me call him back. And his name is Gary Chandler. And so I called him, and I sold him 2 signature sets on the phone in about 15 minutes or so. So that was like my reward for the day. That was a nice little boost, 4,000 CPO, that'll get you somewhere. So Tuesday morning, I get up to a phone call from Gary again, canceling one of the signature sets. Great, there goes 2,000 CPO, but no problem. I'm doing everything I can. I say, hey, I remember you had brought a friend Mark by the booth. You think I should reach out to him? He's like, sure, call Mark. So I called Mark right after I got off the phone with Gary, and Mark bought a second signature set for another house. So boom, they're balanced out that signature return. And I just kept fighting through the entire push that way. I fought through starting in, I just kept going. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every day, nonstop activity, massive action, massive action. So that for me is a huge thing, is recommitting to the action, stepping aside from the results, stepping aside from the goal, and just being a warrior on the phone, being a warrior, making every call, taking all the activity and action that you can take. So what were some of the activities I took this last week? I was at almost 40,000 going into Monday, and I finished the push at 70. So I sold close, just over $30,000. And I actually wrote down the breakdown here so that you guys can see. And the reason that I wanted to focus so much on the level of activity and not so much the actions is because the truth is, for each of you, the actions might be different. For some of you, you've been in the business for a year or two, you can call some past customers. And regardless of who you are, you can call your past customers. A big part of my sales these last 4 days were calling back people that had ordered from me during the push. And I'm going to share the approach that I used to do that. But calling back past customers has been a key part of my success over the many, many years. For some of you, that may mean days of phone calls. For some of you, that may mean an hour of phone calls. And I wanted to focus on that activity of doing everything in your power to the very end, no matter what, because the activity doesn't matter. It's the quantity and the fire with which you attack that activity that's going to make the difference for you. So maybe it's calling past referrals. And one of the things that I always do at the end of a push, like especially for those of you that may be far from your goal right now, and far could be $2,000 for some of you, it could be $10,000. Regardless, when you're feeling far from your goal, you need a boost, right? I always feel like I need to fish. I need to fish for a big order. And so on Monday, one of the main things I did was I took an hour or two and I made a target attack list of not just the best, not just people, but like my absolute best people. You know, who can I call that could pop a grand or two or three? And so this might entail going through your customer list from, you know, highest CPO lifetime to lowest. It could be looking at your rec sheets. And this is something that I did for years and still do, is like going back to old lists of prime customers. This was something I did back in 2014. I was feeling really dry on leads. I felt like I had called everybody and I was reaching out. I was trying to get to this big goal. And I start going through like sheets from 2 years and 3 years ago. And I just pull out everybody that whose face and name I could remember. Oh, she bought a grand. She must have some good people. Oh, they bought an ultimate set. I know they have some good people. And I pulled aside these old lists I hadn't called in years, and I started calling through them. And from that list, I got Frances. Frances was referred to me my very first summer. I had called her infinitely that summer and never gotten a hold of her. And this was like 3 years later. I reached out to her. Her situation had changed. She was open to seeing me. She had a homemaker already, and I sold her an ultimate. I sold her flatware. I sold her pretty much everything she was missing from the Cookware collection. She introduced me to her sister, who also had a homemaker. I upgraded her to an ultimate and also sold her flatware. And then I met the third sister, who also bought $2,000. So from reaching back out to this old list, boom, 3 appointments, 3 referrals, 3 leapfrogs. It was like $6,000. It was crazy. And that only happened because I fished, right? And when you're fishing for those big orders, when you're fishing for those best customers, one of the things you have to be prepared for is extra rejection, extra no's, you know, because it's not always, it's harder to get in front of those best people, but it's worth it. So you need to identify and go through your business right now and say, where could I find $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 order? I don't know where it's going to come from, but who could it be? Could it be from old rec sheets? Could it be calling back some old customers that you know were good and asking them to introduce you to some new people? Maybe it's calling back people that just bought from you a week or 2 weeks ago that you felt like, there was some CPO left on the table. Oh, she was really interested in the cookware and I couldn't get her there. Maybe with my goal, if I share it right, she'll be open to taking the chance on it. And that was one of the orders I actually closed at the end. I called, she was one of my last demos on Thursday. The contest ended on Friday at 1. So Thursday around 5 o'clock, this lady that had to reschedule on me 4 times over the push. There was a service call, a past customer that had only ever bought a cheese knife. I called her. She's like, oh, I forgot again. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I'm getting my nails done. And I'm like, well, Rita, you know, today's the last day. I know you are really serious about adding to your collection, and I don't want you to miss out the specials. Can we have like the most memorable Zoom call ever and do it while you're getting your nails done? And she's like, oh my gosh, you're crazy. Okay, I feel so terrible that I've canceled so many times. Hold on, let me see if I can figure it out. So here she is in this loud nail salon, and I'm going through the demo, and I end up selling her an ultimate set. We also talked a little bit about cookware. She also, by the way, had like 4 or 5 pieces of Cutco, and I just didn't have the time or energy at the moment to like figure out an upgrade. So I'm like, look, let's just order the set. It's a great deal. When it comes in, we'll figure it out. I'll swap the stuff that you already have. There was only a couple pieces. We'll make it work. Don't worry. And, you know, she was like, all right, fine, let's do it. And I piqued her interest with cookware, but under those circumstances, you know, with her at a nail salon and being half distracted, you know, the cookware took a little more selling. And so I wasn't able to close it. But the following day, I had shared my goals. I told her, hey, if I really need it, could I maybe give you a call tomorrow? Maybe it's not the pots and pans. I know you want to learn more before you make the investment, but maybe you can add some gifts or something extra, something small, whatever it is. I might need a little extra help to get to my goal. She's like, sure, I don't know if I'll get anything, but you can call me. So like 10 hours later, the next morning, I needed the order. I called her back. I said, Rita, here's the deal. Yesterday when we spoke, I didn't think I was going to get there. I didn't think I'd have to make this phone call. Yesterday, before our appointment, I was still like $10,000 away. But you were super supportive. You bought that ultimate set. And then I had an order for almost $5,000 after I spoke to you. So now I'm actually like really, really close. And your order for the cookware could make all the difference. I know you're crazy busy. I know you really wanted to talk about it with your husband. So here's what I'm thinking. If you can take the leap of faith on me, you know how much you love your Cutco. Let's put down the deposit. It's about $500. Put it on your card so Neil doesn't even know about it, which is her husband. That was the concern, was like the husband needs to be involved in the purchase of the cookware. She already had the okay for the knives, but not for the pans. And I said, well, don't you think he'd be more excited about them if he sees them? She's like, oh yeah. I'm like, well, let's put down the deposit. I'll hand deliver them in a couple of weeks. If he doesn't love it, we'll return it, no problem. And you'll get a full refund for your deposit. But if he loves it, you saved the deal from Christmas in July. Like, you're giving yourself that option. You're extending 2 weeks the option to get that at a discount. And I'll be good for it if he decides he doesn't want it. But once he sees it and once I talk to him, he's probably going to be okay with keeping the pans. And she's like, all right, fine, let's do it. And that was an accomplished cookware set, which really gave me a big boost. After that order, I was only a couple grand away. And so calling back and fishing for those big orders and being prepared to face some pushback when you're calling those top people, but making a list of who could be $1 grand, $2 grand or more, and spend some time. Maybe it's a couple hours. Maybe for some of you, it might be a full day of calling customers, but target your best people. Now's the time to do it and share your goals with them. So targeting your best referrals, old referrals, targeting your top customers, your top orders from the pushes, going back and asking for more referrals, focused on getting in front of the best people that you can over the next 4 days, because it can make all the difference. A part of the reason I didn't schedule more appointments is I have the opportunity of having my customers. And so I spent 4 days just hammering through, calling everybody. And here's basically the conversation that I had with my customers. And I'll share this if you guys want to have it. Let me pull it up here. This is basically the magic bus ride approach, right? This is something that I'm sure your managers have access to. This is my little version of it. The key to this conversation is passion. It's genuine and being authentic about it. So if I'm calling a customer and I say, hey, Ms. Jones, how are you? Build rapport, reconnect. If they've already had their Cutco, received their Cutco, then I say, how's your Cutco been doing? Or if they're a customer that bought for the first time during the push, like a demo, then I'll say, how's your husband, and connect and build rapport that way. And then I ask for permission. Can I share something like really crazy that I've had going on and I've been working on? It'll just take a minute. Sure. Okay, great. So over the last 18 days, I've been working in this huge sales contest that Cutco has. It's kind of like the Super Bowl of the Cutco world. It is a really big deal. Then I explained my commitment to this contest. I've been waking up every day at 7 a.m. I've had this meeting with my office. I've been on Zoom every morning. I've been doing 8 appointments every single day for the last 17 days. And I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but my goal, the mission I set out, was to sell $70,000 over the 18-day period. And if your number is big, you may want to tamper that by saying hey, I know this sounds crazy. I know this seems like ridiculous, but I wanted to sell $70,000 in 18 days. Yeah, it's crazy. And right now I'm at $35,000 or $39,000 or $40,000. And I still need to sell an additional $10,000 to hit my goal. I know it's a lot of knives. I have 2 days left. So I have 2 days to sell $10,000. And to be honest, I know it sounds crazy. I don't even know if it's possible, but I committed that I was going to do everything that I could to the very end, no matter what, to try to hit it. Now, don't freak out. I'm not calling asking you to buy $10,000. Although if you wanted to, you'd get a crazy deal and I would not tell you no. Okay, so keep an open mind. I was actually just calling to see if there was anything at all that was maybe in the back of your head that I could tempt you with a super crazy, once in a lifetime, helped me hit my goal kind of special. You know, I know the last time we were over, we had talked about the pans. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. We also have the silverware. Maybe it's upgrading your knife set. Now throw out a couple of ideas, gifts, and try to spark their interest and see what they're interested in. And based on the response there, I'll either schedule them for an appointment to try to show them some of the new stuff, especially if they're not sure, but they want to help. Then I'll schedule them for either a Zoom call or a regular appointment, or I'll have them get on the website. I'm like, well, hey, it seems like you might be open to doing something. And I know we haven't really talked about Cutco in a while. So maybe you can hop on the website, make a little list of some stuff. And the contest ends on tomorrow. So if I hit my goal, you won't hear from me again. But if it comes down to the end and like even something small could make the difference, can you check out the website and be prepped? And like, maybe I can call you, maybe something jumped out at you. All right, awesome. I really appreciate you being a warrior for me, Ms. Jones. I know this sounds crazy, but it makes a huge difference to me, and it means a lot. So this was the conversation that I had every day from Monday to Thursday that created an extra like $6,000 in sales that Friday morning before the contest ended at 1. It was calling back all those people. Some of those people right away, they had something in mind. I was able to close the order. Some of them maybe had something, but weren't ready to commit to it. And they're like, well, if you really need it at the end, I might be open to this. Call me back. And a huge percentage of those, I mean, I have to say it's 70, 80% of those convert into a sale at the end if they didn't convert into a sale at the beginning. It's been always very shocking to me that it's maybe 20, 25% that don't, that from this conversation don't turn into anything. It's pretty remarkable. So I want to share 2 more quick stories with you, and then we'll be done. You know, doing everything you can to the very end, no matter what, being committed to that mantra. It is the most powerful tool I've found in my business. And it's best illustrated, I think, in a story that, you know, Kathy, you may or may not remember, but Angie Gonzalez was one of our assistant managers. And I can't remember the push that it was for, but I remember coming into the office. I knew we were driving. It must have been ST2. We were going to get on the bus the next day. And I came in, I had hit my goal. I'm feeling great. It's like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I see Angie in the office, and she has this face of determination like I've never seen anybody have. She was on a mission. She has her rec sheet spread out on the table, and she's just hammering away, calling. And I asked him, like, who is she calling? Is she calling some past customers? It's like 11 o'clock at night. Like, well, she's $2,000 away from her goal, and as she's calling demos. I'm like, she's calling demos? It's 11 o'clock at night. What is she? We're leaving tomorrow morning. When is she scheduling these demos for? This was before the virtual demo was a real thing. And I don't remember who I had the conversation with, but they're like, yeah, you know, she's trying to see if she can get an immediate phone appointment. That's what we used to call them, was phone appointments, and try to sell something to hit her goal tonight. And I'm like, okay, good luck with that. About 20, 30 minutes later, she comes out of the office. I sold an ultimate set. She had called a random referral from a random list at 11 o'clock at night. And the lady's like, Cutco? Oh, I've been thinking I want to get a second set. I have the big one, the one with the 12 steak knives, and I just got a new lake house. Can you sell me one of those? A $2,000 order at 11 o'clock at night to calling recommendations. I mean, something crazier I've never seen happen in our business. And I'll tell you, if she was focused on the results, if she was focused on what might happen from those phone calls, she never would have made that call. What was her commitment? Her commitment was to doing everything she could in her power to the very end, no matter what, because that's what she promised herself she was going to do. And that resulted in her hitting her goal and selling $2,000. And that's the type of commitment I'm trying to convey to you guys that it takes to do something big. The actions are going to be different, and you may not even know what those actions are till the moment comes. It might be knocking on doors. I did that my first SC2 as well. And I ended up selling a $300 order, which, by the way, that customer from 10 years ago, I saw him this push. It was a great story. And he bought another couple $100 from me. So maybe it's knocking on doors. I don't know what it is for you. Calling past customers, old referrals, past customers for referrals, whatever it is, your commitment needs to be to find a creative way to get there no matter what. And don't stop. There's no time left. There's 4 days, guys. You need to be on the phone like a warrior from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 9 p.m. at night every day. Don't waste a single hour. That's the difference between a champion, someone that hits their goal, and someone that just misses it in these last 4 days. There's no time to spare. There's no time to waste. You don't have time to feel sorry for yourself, to feel bad about the results. You need to be disconnected from the results and just focus on the action nonstop. And if you're not sure what action to take, reach out to your managers. That's something that I've been really good at the end, because I know how important that time is. And if I feel like I'm beating away at something that's not getting me results, sometimes I need to shift, call a different list, call a different type of customer, make a different type of call. And oftentimes I'll ask for advice on that when those moments come. And you need to use your circles around you to make that happen. Final story I'll share. 2011, my goal was to sell $12,500, win the limo night, my very first summer, starting basically from scratch. There's 2 days left of the push and I am $6,000 away. So I've sold $6,000 over the course of 17 days or 16 days. And now I have basically a day and a half to double that. And I have one of the worst days of my career. I drive all around town. I had 6 appointments. I sold, I think, a paring knife on one of them. I had cancellations, no shows, no sales. It was a mess. My air conditioning broke in my 1998 Lincoln Town Car that belonged to my grandfather. And my last appointment, I drive to the wrong freaking house. It's an 8 p.m. appointment. Turns out I'm all the way across town from this lady's house. And because at the time, especially, I was a disaster, I didn't have great notes. I had written her name and address on my planner, but I didn't have her phone number. And I couldn't find the rec sheet. So I was faced with another decision, right? Of, man, well, I don't have her number. It's 8 o'clock. There's no way I'm going to get to her house by 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I can't call her to tell her I'm late. I should just go home. I'm right. My house is like 10 minutes away. This house is like 45 minutes away. I should just call it a day. What are the odds after the day I have bad karma? All these thoughts went through my head. And then I stopped and I said, I committed to doing everything I can to the very end, no matter what. I drove to her house, got there sweaty and a mess, I'm sure, at 9 o'clock at night, knocked on her door. And she's like, sweetie, you were supposed to be here an hour ago. It's 9 o'clock. I'm like, Pilar, you have no idea. I have had the best, craziest, the worst day ever. Please just let me do my appointment for you. I've been working so hard. And so she took pity on me and let me in the house. And I did the whole demo and I felt some magic coming. And she says no. And I drop down and she says no. And I drop down again and she says no. And it turns out she was having, she had breast cancer. She was having surgery in a week, wasn't going to be working. She had heard about Cutco. I think she actually had a pair of scissors, but just couldn't make the investment because of her life situation at the moment. And now it's 11 o'clock, 10:30. And I asked her a crazy question. And this is the kind of thing, like everything you can to the very end, no matter what. It's the last night of the push. I'm leaving for the conference the next day. And I asked her, hey, is there anybody you can refer me to that we might be able to call right now that might be open to taking a look at the stuff? And she's like, sweetheart, it's 11 o'clock at night. Who do you think I'm going to call for you at 11 o'clock at night? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just asking. You don't have to say yes, but you have no idea what I've been through these last 17 days. And I committed to doing everything I could to the very end. So I just thought I'd ask, I don't know if maybe you know somebody that's in another time zone, a family member that you talk to late all the time. I just figured I'd ask. She pauses for a second. She says, actually, I do know somebody. He's a young guy. He'll be up and he's in Venezuela. He needs some kitchen stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, how young? She's like, 23. Okay, so a 23-year-old in another country. This is like definitely one of those prime Mac referrals, right? Not so much, but I'm going to do everything I can no matter what. I'm like, great, call him. No hesitations, call him. No idea who I was talking to. I did a phone demo. Again, not really a thing at the time. And I sold him $3,000 on the phone. To the day, he's bought nearly $19,000 worth of Cutco from me over the years. But I sold him $3,000 on the phone. I got off the phone with him, writing up the order. I am elated. I am so excited. She can see my enthusiasm. And I guess hearing the demo a second time must have triggered something for her, because she said, you know what, I'll take the homemaker set. And she bought a homemaker set from me that night. $4,000 appointment. And of course, I sold the extra 1,000 or 1,500 I needed to hit my goal the next day. But the magic happened because of my commitment to that goal to the very, very end and fighting through. So that's basically what I got for you guys. I think we have a little bit of extra time. If there's any questions that we want to go through, I know that there wasn't a whole lot in terms of tangible things to do, but at the end, there's nothing crazy. There's nothing new I can teach you that you don't already know. Right now, it's about massive action to that last moment, and magical things will happen.
I love it. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You guys have Taylor Max here. Awesome stuff, T Max. Any questions? Any reflections? Anything that's been helpful here? I definitely want to reflect back to him. And anything you guys want to bring up? Go ahead, Zavi. Unmute yourself.
Right. So I have a question, which I feel like maybe it's been answered, but what have you put into practice when like you're physically tired and like I've seen what you said is covered like when you're mentally and emotionally exhausted, when like your physical body is like, I am not willing to do the rest of this. Like, how do you respond or get yourself back into the flow of things, getting towards like, this last part of the competition?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a struggle I've had many times in the past. And what comes to mind is 2019. I had donated my kidney 2 months before SC2. Wasn't technically cleared to work yet. And that was the most physically challenging push I had ever had, for sure. And what I think happened, well, there's two things that I do. One is I know that when I hit the lotto, right, when I make something big happen, the energy just kind of comes. Like, who doesn't have energy after selling an ultimate? It's not real. And so I keep that in mind and I just focus on the next action. I'm not thinking about the fact that I'm going to make 100 calls. I'm going to make one more, one more, one more, one more, until I hit something that I know is going to be great. And then all of a sudden the energy comes back. So I try to ignore and pretend like the real things in front of me are not real. I only have to make one more call. And then after I make that call, I only have to make one more call. I only have to do one more thing, right? So that's one thing. And the second thing is I've always seen real value in my mind being stronger than my body. It's something I've had to develop because I'm not naturally the strongest mental person in the world. But I've always seen that in other successful people, their ability to just power through whatever their body's telling them and do things anyway. And I've admired that. And so I keep that in my mind. And I'm like, it may not matter right now for this contest or for this experience, but that's a skill I want to develop. And there are times in life where it's life or death for many different reasons. Anything can happen. And I want that ability to summon strength out of nothing for my body. And so I think of it as a training exercise because really during a push, it feels like life and death in the moment, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. But I treat it that way and I see it as a practice run for there really being something coming up later on. And I just see those as opportunities to train. It's like doing another rep, right? I don't want to do it, but I make myself do it anyway. And I know that long term, I'm going to benefit from it. And then the last thing is music. I just, sometimes I need that. I take 2 minutes aside, listen to my favorite song, jump around, move, motion creates emotion, and I summon that strength. I hope that answers the question. I think Daniel's got his hands up there.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, I love your stories. They're really inspiring, and you being able to detach yourself from the results is really empowering, and still being able to push is really good because I think I need to do that. But a big question I had was like, you said you sold to a guy in Venezuela, and like, did he live there, or did like, or it was like a vacation? Like, how did you sell them?
It was one of her clients, and wealthy people in other countries are accustomed to buying things in the US. So he was obviously very wealthy, 23, very successful. He had an American credit card and American shipping address, so it wasn't a problem. And oftentimes, especially in Miami, with such an international market, there are other countries where you just can't buy stuff. You can't find stuff. And so a lot of times those customers have the systems in place to be able to order it through normal means.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was confused about that.
Any other feedback or questions? Well, this was awesome. It's so good to see you. It's so wild to think that it's been a decade since you started, and just so proud of what you're doing.